My name is Samuel Carter, and I am 58 years old now. Though some days it feels like the weight of my years sits heavier on my bones than the number suggests. I have lived a long life, worked with my hands, built things from nothing, carried more responsibility than I ever thought I could. And I believed, with every part of me, that loyalty meant something in this world. I believed that when you stand beside someone, when you give them your time, your loyalty, your effort, your trust, and your heart, that they will stand beside you in return. I believed that shared history means something, that years of laughter, struggle, sacrifice, and brotherhood creates a bond that cannot be shaken. But life has a way of proving you wrong exactly when you think you are the safest. I learned, far too late in my life, that the person you would have stepped in front of a bullet for, the person you would defend even when the whole world called you blind, can be the very same person who would sell you out for a pocket full of bills and a chance to feel important. People think betrayal comes with shouting, dramatic fights, visible scars. But the truth is, betrayal is quiet. It starts small. It starts with a tone in someone's voice that you overlook, a change in their eyes that you explain away, a missed call, a secret you choose not to ask about because you think love or brotherhood or trust can carry through anything. I thought that too. I thought loyalty was unbreakable. I thought the bond I had with the man I considered my closest friend, my brother not by blood but by everything else, was the firmest foundation in my life. I gave him everything. I trusted him more than myself. I believed we were inseparable. And yet, when the moment came where money whispered to him, when success dangled in front of him like a bright coin catching sunlight, he did not hesitate. He did not pause to think about all the years we had walked through fire together, all the moments where we picked each other up from the ground, all the secrets shared in quiet rooms where only truth should exist. He traded all of that. He traded me. He traded our brotherhood. He traded decades of loyalty for something that cannot hold you at night, something that disappears as fast as it comes. Something that feels powerful until you realize it is hollow. Money, just money. And the cruelest part is that I did not see it coming. I was blindsided, like a man stepping into the sunlight and getting hit by a freight train he never heard. Betrayal does not just break your heart, it breaks the version of yourself who believed you were safe. It breaks the memories that once felt warm. It breaks the image of the person you thought you knew. It took me a long time to understand that the greatest losses do not come from strangers. They come from the people we hold closest. That is what makes betrayal cut the deepest. But this story is not just about loss. It is about what happens after the ground beneath your feet collapses. It is about how a man rebuilds his life from pieces that do not fit together anymore. It is about learning who I am when the version of me that trusted blindly is gone. It is about learning how to breathe again when everything in your chest feels tight and heavy. I learned how to take my life back, not all at once, but slowly, one painful piece at a time. So if you are listening to me now, if you have ever been broken by someone you never thought would hurt you, if betrayal has ever knocked the wind from your lungs, then sit with me, stay with me, and hear this story. Because betrayal does not care about age. It does not care about history. It does not care about love. Even at 50, betrayal can hit you like a truck you never saw coming. And yet, somehow, we learn to stand again. This is my story, and I am finally ready to tell it. I grew up in a small, sun-baked town in Arizona, the kind of place where the air always smelled faintly of dust and diesel, where the horizon was wide and flat and unbroken, and where every conversation started with the same casual "how you holding up?" Even if you knew damn well the person asking didn't like you and you didn't much like them either. It was a place where people drove old trucks that rattled like they were held together with hope, where Saturday nights meant beers on someone's porch under yellow, porch light bulbs that attracted every moth in the county, and where reputations were made by how hard a man worked rather than how smooth he talked. It wasn't a town with fancy coffee shops or folks speaking about dreams like there was something waiting round the corner. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And in a world that becomes harder to understand the older you get, that kind of honesty feels sacred. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from anything special except to working hands and the stubborn belief that if you sweat enough, you earn your place in the world. So at 23, I started my own construction company. It wasn't really a company in the beginning, more like a man and his determination. I had a rusted red toolbox that had belonged to my old man and a beat-up Ford that coughed smoke every time I turned the ignition. I remember driving to job sites with the windows rolled down because the AC had died long ago. Heat rolling in like waves from the desert, sweat sticking my shirt to my back before the sun even fully climbed the sky. I didn't complain. I liked the work. I liked taking something broken, abandoned, or plain and turning it into something solid and real. I liked the rhythm of saws, the weight of lumber on my shoulder, the way a finished structure stood there like proof that the hours hadn't been wasted. By 30, things had changed. I had employees. I had real contracts, the kind that came with signatures and deadlines and people shaking my hand with respect. Folks in town began saying, "Call Sam, he'll get it done right." And that meant more to me than any award or certificate ever could. By 40, life had settled into something good. I had a wife who smiled at me across the dinner table, and a house with a yard big enough for weekend barbecues, and a name that people trusted. I didn't think of myself as successful. I just thought I'd done what a man is supposed to do: build, protect, support. But if I am being truthful, the real shape of my life, the real structure everything stood on, wasn't my business or my marriage or my reputation. It was Jack, my best friend, my brother in everything but blood. We met when we were 16, both working part-time at a lumber yard, stacking boards under a sun that burned everything it touched. He was loud and fast-talking even then, always cracking jokes, always making people laugh even when they wanted to be mad at him. And I was the opposite: quiet, slow to speak, always thinking before I opened my mouth. People used to joke that I was the brakes and he was the gas pedal. If I was the foundation, steady and solid, he was the spark, the energy that made things feel alive. We went through everything together: graduation, first heartbreaks, late night drives with nowhere to go, the funeral when I buried my father and felt my chest cave from grief. He was the only person I let see me cry that day. We shared so much that I didn't really know where I ended and he began. We shared food when money was thin. We shared rides when trucks broke down. We shared secrets that we never needed to say out loud again. So when I started my business, bringing him in wasn't a decision. It was automatic, like breathing, like of course. We worked side by side. I handled the crews, the building, the blueprints, the hands-on part. Jack handled the talking, the clients, the deals. People in town learned quick that hiring one meant hiring both. We were a package. Some folks said we were like peanut butter and jelly, always stuck together, always balanced. Others said we were like dynamite and fuse, strong when controlled, but dangerous if separated. But to us, it was simple. Life was steady. It felt warm. It felt right. And when things feel right for too long, you stop watching for change. You stop guarding the door. You stop thinking something could come in and ruin it. And that's when life shifts. Not like a storm you can see coming. No, quiet, gradual, like sand slipping away one grain at a time. Life has a way of changing when you stop paying attention. I'll start by saying this. Love makes you blind, or at least it blurs things just enough that you don't notice the lines shifting under your feet. You think you're standing on solid ground, but really you're standing on sand that's slowly being washed out from under you. You don't notice until you fall. I met Linda at one of those community gatherings where everyone pretends they're just there to eat, but really they're there to judge who brought what and who gained weight since last Christmas. Kids running around with ketchup on their faces, old country songs floating from a cheap speaker, the smell of charcoal and burnt hot dogs in the air. That kind of day. Linda stood out in that crowd like the sun peeking through storm clouds. Her laugh was warm, not the kind of laugh people use to impress others. It was a laugh that made the world soften just a little. She had honey-colored hair that curled softly around her shoulders, and eyes that reminded me of lakes in summer, calm and steady. I don't know how to explain it, except to say that when she looked at you, you felt seen in a way you forgot was possible. I fell hard. I fell fast. I fell like a man who didn't expect to fall ever again. Jack noticed. He saw how I stood a little taller around her, how I smiled more, and at first he seemed genuinely happy for me. He clapped me on the back. He teased me the way best friends do, the way brothers do, and I believed him. But looking back, the shift didn't start with jealousy. People think that's where betrayal grows from. But no, it started with something smaller, something quieter. Access. Linda came from a different world than we did. Not movie star wealthy, not billionaire wealthy, but comfortable. Old money, country club money, weekend wine tasting, trip money. Her parents lived in a house with real chandeliers and marble counters imported from somewhere, with a name I couldn't pronounce. Her friends wore watches that cost as much as our drywall orders. They talked in soft voices, like the world would always make space for them. She wanted to introduce me to that world, and I tried. For her, I tried. I learned how to hold a wine glass by the stem. I learned how to nod politely when someone called hard work quaint. I learned to breathe slow and swallow the urge to tell people exactly where they could shove their fake smiles. Jack, though. Jack didn't need to learn. He walked into that world like he had been waiting for the door his entire life. He loved the shine of it, the compliments, the way people looked at him like he mattered more than he did yesterday. It was like watching a man who had always been hungry suddenly discover he'd been standing outside a buffet. That's when things started to shift. He started using words he didn't use before. Business words, market words, return on investment and expansion potential and strategic leverage. Like he swallowed a dictionary written by someone who never swung a hammer in his life. He started dressing differently too. Nice shirts, pressed collars, expensive boots that never touched dirt, shirts tucked perfectly, hair styled instead of just pushed back. And then he started introducing himself differently. Not I work with Sam, but I'm the Kona, not we run a construction company, but we're in development and contracting. changed his voice, his walk, the way he looked at people. The way he looked at me, he still smiled, still joked, still called me friend. But he didn't call me brother anymore. It was subtle, the way a room gets darker when a cloud passes in front of the sun. You notice it, but you tell yourself it'll pass. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being insecure, that love had made me soft, that Jack was just growing, evolving, stepping into new spaces. But your gut doesn't lie. It whispers before the truth becomes loud enough to break you, and deep down, somewhere under the warmth and comfort and new happiness in my life, something restless stirred, something that said, "This is the beginning of something you won't be able to stop." I just didn't know it yet. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those warm Arizona days where the sun feels close enough to touch and the air smells like dust and old memories. I was in my office, sorting invoices, brushing off sawdust from my sleeves like always, when Jack walked in. He had this smile on his face, wide and bright, but wrong. Too big, too polished. A smile that didn't match the man I grew up with. It looked like a smile he had borrowed from someone else, someone hungrier, mate. Listen, we've got a shot at something huge, he said. He'd started saying mate recently, ever since he got hooked on some Australian real estate men who drank protein shakes, wore sunglasses inside, and talked about passive income while standing in rented penthouse. Jack absorbed everything around him, and lately, everything around him had been the kind of people who believed owning money made you worth more than other men. He sat the documents down in front of me, like he was placing treasure on the table. He tapped the folder twice, the way salesmen tap things when they're trying to make them feel more valuable. It was a commercial development project, not a small house renovation or a warehouse rebuild like we usually did. This was big. City-level big. The kind of project that required lawyers, banks, press meetings, budgets with so many zeros your eyes started to go blurry. And behind it, backing it, were investors connected to Linda's family. A circle of polished shoes and perfect teeth. People who had never worked with their hands a day in their lives, but had the power to move the earth with one meeting. I flipped through the documents slowly, reading carefully, and as I did, I felt my chest begin to tighten. It was high risk. Not the kind of risk where you lose some money and learn a lesson. The kind where you risk losing everything. The company, the equipment, the house, the retirement, the future. I closed the folder and slid it back across the table. "Jack," I said softly, "the way you speak when you're trying to hold a friendship steady. We built this company brick by brick. We didn't jump. We climbed, slow, hard, honest. That's why people trust us. We don't take leaps this big." He didn't argue. He didn't push. He just smiled that strange smile again, like he already knew something I didn't. "Yeah, I figured you'd say that." I didn't like the way he said it. Like he had predicted me. Like he had planned around me. But I let it pass. Because when you love someone like family, sometimes you talk yourself out of your own instincts, just so you don't feel the pain of being suspicious. 2 weeks went by. I didn't hear anything more about the deal. Jack went about business as usual, laughing, showing up at job sites, slapping guys on the back, acting like everything was the same. Then one morning, a courier came by the office with a thick envelope. Contract copies, finalized, stamped, approved. When I opened the packet, I saw it, my signature, my name, perfectly written in my handwriting, on every page. Every line, every legal commitment. But I had never touched that pen. I stared at it so long, my eyes blurred. My breathing felt tight, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my lungs in their fist. My hands were shaking, but not the kind of shaking that comes from anger. The kind that comes from realizing your entire reality just snapped in half. I walked out into the workshop. The smell of lumber and oil hit me like it always did, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Jack was there, laughing with one of the new hires. Like nothing in the world could ever touch him. I waited until the room cleared. Then I held up the papers. My voice was quiet. Too quiet. "Jack," I said, "what is this?" He turned. He didn't look scared. He didn't look guilty. He didn't even look sorry. He looked annoyed, like I was interrupting him. I swallowed hard and tried once more. "Why?" He didn't look away. Didn't hesitate. Didn't blink. "Because you're too slow, Sam. I'm tired of waiting to be rich." That's what he said. That's what he chose. Money over brotherhood. Greed over loyalty. He said it like it was obvious. Like it was reasonable. Like it was my fault for wanting to protect what we had built. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to break bone. There are moments in life where something in you dies quietly, without any dramatic explosion or shouting or violence. It just goes still. Something that was warm turns cold. Something that was alive goes silent. And in that moment, the brother I thought I had, the one I shared my childhood with, my grief, my victories, my losses vanished. All that was left was a stranger wearing his face. I remember sitting there in my office chair, not moving, barely breathing. The forged contract lay on the desk in front of me like a dead thing, like something rotten that had been growing behind my back and finally crawled into the light. The air conditioner rattled in the corner, blowing cold air that somehow made the room feel hotter, smaller, tighter. My office had always been my sanctuary, a place that smelled of sawdust, warm coffee, and years of honest sweat. A place that held memories, good days, bad days, long days. But suddenly it felt foreign, like I didn't belong in it anymore. I stared at my own handwriting, except it wasn't mine. My name curved and looped exactly like I sign it. The tilt, the spacing, the pressure. I had signed my name 100,000 times in my life, on checks, contracts, notes, Christmas cards. I knew every shape of my signature, and yet I hadn't touched that pen. Someone had studied me, learned me, copied me, replaced me, and that someone was Jack. It wasn't just a forged document. It was a message that said, you were never safe, your trust was never real. The brotherhood was one-sided. He was keeping score, and you weren't. I got up slowly, like an old man who'd aged 10 years in 1 hour. I walked toward the shop area where the sound of drills, saws, and loud conversation usually filled the air like a heartbeat. But today felt muted, like someone had turned the world down. I found Jack leaning over the hood of a truck, laughing with one of the younger guys, carefree as a summer breeze. That laugh used to be infectious, used to make bad days better. Now it sounded like glass cracking under pressure. I waited until the noise died down. Then I stepped forward and held the papers up. I didn't wave them, didn't shove them in his face, just held them like one holds a photograph of something painful. "Jack," I said. He turned around, slow, casual. like he already knew what this was. His eyes flicked toward the papers, then back to me. No fear, no guilt, not even surprise. "What's up?" he said, smiling like a used car salesman. My mouth was dry. I had to swallow before I spoke. "You forged my signature," I said, "on a contract that puts the company in debt we can't climb out of if this goes bad." He didn't defend it, didn't deny it, didn't even pretend to be sorry. He shrugged, just shrugged. "Sam, come on," he said, switching to that smooth, fake relaxed tone he'd picked up from those flashy online gurus. "You're too cautious. You think too small. We needed to move. We needed to grow. This is how business works now." My heart didn't pound. My voice didn't rise. It was like something inside me had shut off all the alarms to keep me from exploding into pieces. "You broke something we can't fix." "Jack," I said, quiet, almost whispering. He stepped back, spread his hands like he was some kind of victim. "I saved us," he said. "You want to keep driving rusty trucks and doing kitchen remodels forever. I'm not living like that. I'm not dying broke. You should be thanking me. I didn't blink. I didn't move. You didn't take a risk," I said. "You stole my name." That was when he laughed. Not a small laugh. Not a nervous laugh. A full laugh. A laugh that said he thought I was the fool here. A laugh that said I was simple, old-fashioned, weak. A laugh that sliced through 26 years of loyalty. Like a razor dot, it hit me harder than the betrayal itself. I had stood beside this man at my father's funeral. I had hugged him when his mother passed. I had loaned him money when he was broke. I had listened to him cry, rage, dream. We had dug holes together in heat so bad the sky shimmered. We had worked beside each other until our hands cracked and bled. I had trusted him with everything I was, and he walked away from all of that for dollar signs. He walked past me, clapped me on the shoulder like I was being dramatic. "Don't worry, Sam," he said. "When the money starts rolling in, you'll thank me." He walked out of the office like he owned the place, like the ground obeyed him, like the world owed him something, and I stood there, holding the proof that the person I had trusted most in my life had turned me into a stepping stone. Just a tool, just a name he could sign. It's strange, the moments we remember so clearly. I remember the sound of a nail gun going off in the distance. I remember the smell of sawdust in the air. I remember the flickering fluorescent light buzzing overhead. I remember thinking, so this is how betrayals happen, not in storms, not in dramatic fights, but in quiet rooms on regular days, with soft voices and forged signatures. And in that moment, Jack didn't just take my business. He took the world I thought I lived in. He took the version of reality where loyalty means something, and all that was left was silence. A silence so heavy, it felt like a funeral. But the thing about being broken, sometimes the breaking is what wakes you up. The investors didn't want to hear about betrayal. Investors don't care about trust, history, loyalty, or brotherhood. All they see are numbers, charts, profit margins, growth projections. To them, what happened between me and Jack wasn't personal. It was internal restructuring. It was aggressive expansion. It was necessary risk-taking. That's what they called it while shaking my hand and looking past me like I was a plant in the room instead of the man who built the company. They were now trying to profit from Dot, so the project moved forward. Papers were finalized, meetings were held, money was borrowed, land was purchased. And every step forward felt like a stone being laid on my chest, slowly crushing the breath out of me. I could see the cracks forming before anyone else did. I could see how unstable the numbers were, how unrealistic the deadlines were, how shaky the supply line agreements looked. I tried to raise concerns, calmly at first, then firmly, then desperately. But every time, Jack brushed me off. Relax. Sam, he said, you worry too much. We're about to be huge. This is how the big players do it. He wasn't listening to me anymore. He was listening to people who smiled, with their teeth but not their eyes. And the money was a mirage. The more we poured in, the further the finish line moved away. Every month came with new, unexpected expenses, soil tests, permit delays, material shortages, subcontractor changes. The project stretched on like a rubber band pulled tighter and tighter, waiting to snap. Meanwhile, our smaller jobs, the work that actually paid the bills, fed our families, bought groceries, kept fuel in the trucks, got pushed aside like they were beneath us now. Clients we'd worked with for years called me, asking why crews weren't showing up. Suppliers who used to greet me with a handshake were now giving me payment deadlines in sharp, clipped voices. The world I had balanced so carefully was shifting under my feet, and while I was trying to hold the business together with my bare hands, Jack was reinventing himself. He started showing up to the office in tailored shirts with shiny colors. He bought an expensive watch with the kind of metal band that glints even when there's no sun. He started going to rooftop cocktail parties, business luncheons, networking events. But he didn't want to network. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be admired. He wanted to look like a man who had already won. The image, to him, was more real than the company itself, and the cost of that image came out of the foundation of the business I had bled for. Employees who had been with me for years, men who had worked beside me in brutal summer heat, men whose kids I had watched grow up began coming to my office. One by one, hats in hand, not angry, just tired. Sam, they said, I need something steady. I got bills. If I stay, I'm gonna drown with you. Every one of those conversations cut a new scar into me. Not because they left, I understood. I respected it. But because I couldn't save them. I couldn't give them what I'd promised when I hired them. So I stood up. I shook their hands. I hugged them if they'd let me, and I told them the truth. I'm proud of you. You go take care of your family. And slowly, the workshop that once buzzed with power saws, shouts, laughter, and the sound of wood splitting clean turned into a hollow, echoing shell. Closing the company didn't feel like an explosion. It felt like someone turning a dimmer switch down, one click at a time, until the lights went out. There was no dramatic moment, no yelling match, no one slamming doors, just quiet, just absence, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat and hate the sound of it. My home went next, then my truck, and as for my marriage, I wish I could tell you it ended in anger or betrayal or screaming matches. I wish I could say someone was the villain so it would feel cleaner. But the truth is uglier. I disappeared, not physically, emotionally. I became a ghost. I was there, in the house, sitting at the kitchen table, lying in bed beside her. But I wasn't in my life anymore. My mind was stuck in the ruin of what used to be. I couldn't talk, couldn't laugh, couldn't feel, and love cannot survive inside silence. So Linda left. Not because she didn't love me, but because I had nothing left in me to love her back with at 53 years old. I packed what was left of my life into a laundry basket and a trash bag, and I moved into my sister's spare room, a sofa that smelled faintly of dog and lemon furniture polish. I slept with one blanket and a borrowed pillow, listening to the refrigerator hum in the kitchen and wondering how a life can fall apart so completely. Meanwhile, Jack moved into a penthouse downtown. He started posting photos online, dinner on rooftop patios, whiskey in crystal, glasses, truck keys with chrome, fenders and black leather seats, watches that cost more than my first house, smiling like a man who believed he had one. But life has a long memory, and loyalty means something in ways money never will. Because when you betray someone who truly loved you, your victory is temporary, and the fall is guaranteed. The thing about lies is that they don't stay buried. They don't rest. They rot like something dead under the floorboards. And sooner or later, the smell rises up, no matter how many rugs you throw over it. And my life, everything I had lost, everything I had been ashamed of, it didn't stay hidden forever. About a year after I walked away from the wreckage of my business, when I was still trying to figure out what the next chapter of my life would even look like, I got a call. The number was unfamiliar. The voice was steady, older, tired. It belonged to one of the investors, a man named Dalton. We had only met twice before, but his voice carried a weight that made my chest tighten. He asked if we could meet. No details, no explanation. Part of me expected anger, maybe even threats. When someone loses money, the closest person to blame is always the one they can reach, the one they recognize, the one whose signature sat on the papers. My name had been on everything, so I walked into that diner prepared for accusations and curses and maybe even a shove or two. But that's not what I found. Dalton was already there, seated in a booth near the back, the kind of spot people choose when they don't want to be seen. His coffee sat in front of him, untouched, the steam already gone cold. He looked older than I remembered, not by wrinkles or age, but by something much heavier, something you carry in your shoulders and in your eyes. He didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he stirred the coffee slowly, like he was trying to figure out how to speak. "Sam," he said quietly. "I didn't know." I frowned. Didn't know what? He lifted his eyes to mine, and I'll never forget the look in them. Not sympathy, not pity, shame. "I didn't know he forged your signature. I thought you agreed to everything." I didn't speak. I couldn't, because in that moment it hit me all the times I blamed myself, all the nights I lay awake thinking I had dug my own grave, all the guilt I had carried like a stone tied to my chest. None of it belonged to me. The guilt was his, and now it was swallowing everyone. Dalton went on. He explained that the entire development project had collapsed, not because of market shifts, not because of a bad economy, not because of competition, but because the money had been disappearing. Slowly at first, then faster, then everything toppled. The investors were ruined. Some had mortgaged their homes. Others had liquidated savings. A few had taken loans. They trusted Jack. They believed his charm, his confidence, his energy. They thought they were investing in a vision. But what they really invested in was someone's ego. Their properties had already been repossessed. Their accounts were frozen. Some were facing lawsuits. A few had filed for bankruptcy. And Jack had been living large. New cars, weekend trips, designer suits, expensive restaurants, all paid from accounts no one else knew existed. Shell companies, fake invoices, quiet withdrawals, money rerouted through layers of paper so thin it only took the right eyes to see the truth. Eyes like mine. Dalton leaned in, voice lower now, like he was sharing the final piece of a puzzle. "We need evidence," he said. "We need someone who actually understood how the books worked. Someone who was there from the beginning. Someone who wasn't Jack." He didn't have to say my name. I already knew. Here's the funny part. I didn't want revenge. Not then. Revenge felt heavy. Revenge felt exhausting. I was tired. More tired than I had ever been. I didn't want war. I didn't want to drag myself back into the ruins of my old life. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand why someone I trusted would hollow me out like that. Why someone I called a brother could smile in my face while stabbing me in the back. I wanted closure, but sometimes closure isn't what life hands you. Sometimes life gives you truth, raw, undeniable, cold, and truth demands something. It demands justice. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something like purpose again. I didn't run back to Jack the moment the truth came out. I didn't storm into his place, screaming, or call him demanding answers. That's exactly what he would have expected. That's how he liked to play. He liked noise. He liked drama. Noise gave him time to twist stories into shapes that suited him. Drama gave him shadows to hide inside. So instead, I went quiet, real quiet. The kind of quiet where the world almost forgets you're still breathing. I took my time. I studied. I dug into archives I thought I had forgotten how to read. I revisited email threads with timestamps that now told different stories when lined up beside bank records. I combed through contract revisions, old spreadsheets, receipts with signatures that were supposed to be mine but felt wrong. My name had been used like a wrench, practical, disposable, needed only when it served a purpose. And while I was doing all this, while I was piecing together every corner he had cut and every person he had trampled to build that shiny, hollow pedestal he stood on, I began to hear voices. Not imagined voices, real people. People he had stepped on. People he had lied to. People who gave him trust and walked away carrying scars they still didn't know how to explain. A contractor who had been forced to take out a second mortgage to cover unpaid invoices. An assistant who quit because she couldn't be paid. Even while Jack was buying designer watches and taking weekend trips to Miami. A vendor who had been promised equity that didn't exist. They didn't all want revenge. Some just wanted to be heard. Some just wanted to know why. Some, like me, had been carrying quiet shame for things that were never their fault. The strange thing about Jack's new world was that it looked strong from the outside. But once you stepped close, you could see the truth. The foundation was glass. Clear, fragile, thin. A life built on money that wasn't his. Promises that weren't real, and respect that had been rented. Not earned. All I had to do was tap. Meanwhile, Dalton and the other investors were building something of their own. Not a scene, not a spectacle, not vengeance. A case, a legal case so sharp it didn't just hold facts. It held intention. It held direction. It had weight. And it was patient, like a wolf waiting at the edge of the trees. But even with all of that in motion, I still wasn't finished, because I didn't want this to happen behind closed doors, whispered in courtrooms, tucked away in documents no one ever reads. No, the truth deserved a stage and life. In its strange timing, offered one. Jack had planned a celebration dinner. A loud one, luxurious, glittering. One of those dinners where every joke is a little too big and every laugh is a little too sharp. Because people aren't celebrating success. They're trying to convince themselves it exists. The restaurant was the expensive kind. The kind with lighting dim enough to hide how thin the walls really are. A chandelier like a net of golden stars hung over the center table, where Jack stood in a navy suit that probably cost more than my first car. He was smiling with the confidence of someone who had never truly been caught. He held a glass of champagne like a man who believed the world was built to hold him up. No matter how much he took from it, people clapped for him. People believed him. For a moment, I just watched from the doorway. I wanted to see him in his kingdom. I wanted to remember the face he made when he thought he had already won. Then I walked inside. Not fast, not loud, just present. Solid his eyes found mine mid-laugh, and the laugh died in his throat, like someone had yanked the cord out. His smile didn't fade slowly. It dropped like a mask slipping off, revealing the skin underneath that had been sweating the whole time. He tried to speak. His voice stumbled over itself, said, I didn't know you'd be alive. I finished for him. The room froze. Forks stopped moving. Glasses stayed mid-air. Every person at that table suddenly remembered they had no idea what was real and what was not. I walked to the center table, calm. My heartbeat was steady. My hands didn't shake. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folders thick, heavy, full of proof that could cut straight through every lie he had ever told. I didn't throw them. I didn't slam them. I just placed them on the white tablecloth in front of him. Silence wrapped around the room so tightly, it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. And I looked at him, not with fury, not with grief, not with pity, just truth. You didn't just betray me, I said. You betrayed everyone. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to force anything. The truth carried its own gravity, its own weight, its own echo. Security didn't drag him out. They simply walked toward him. And he understood. The investors followed. Their faces said everything words didn't have to. People didn't scream. They whispered. Whispers can destroy. Thrones faster than fire. And just like that, his kingdom cracked. Not in chaos, not in flames, but in silence. The kind that comes when a lie finally runs out of places to hide. After the court judgment, life didn't suddenly feel bright or cinematic. It wasn't like the movies where the hero walks out into the sun, triumphant, with victory music swelling behind them. No, life felt quiet, heavy, and full of small, ordinary victories that most people don't notice. I had survived betrayal, fraud, and the collapse of everything I had built, but survival alone didn't rebuild a life. It just made you aware that the pieces were still there, waiting. I moved back into a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy. The furniture was second-hand, the walls plain, but I could breathe. For the first time in years, I could make decisions for myself again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I spent mornings walking the empty streets, before sunrise, coffee in hand, watching the neighborhood slowly wake up. I began to notice things I had missed when I was caught up in business and betrayal. The way the light reflected on the cracked asphalt, the birds that gathered on the telephone wires, the quiet strength of people who simply showed up every day. I started small, rebuilding my reputation first, reconnecting with old clients, helping local businesses who had suffered during the fallout, offering mentorship to young men and women who wanted to learn the trade. I didn't try to get back the empire I had lost. That life was gone, and I wasn't foolish enough to chase it again. Instead, I focused on trust, respect, and honesty, the things money couldn't buy but which made a man truly rich. One afternoon, while walking past a construction site, a young man approached me. He looked nervous, like he had something to prove. "Mr. Carter?" he asked. I nodded. "I heard about what happened with your company, but I also heard how you came back. I want to work with someone who values honesty, someone who doesn't just care about the money." I looked at him, really looked at him, and in that moment, I realized something I had forgotten during the storm. Life can give you back more than money can. It gives you purpose. It gives you moments where you can leave a mark that isn't measured in dollars. I began taking on small projects again, not for fame, not for status, not even for profit, but for the craft itself. I taught apprentices, watched homes rise from foundations, and felt a sense of pride that no fraudulent deal or fake suit could ever replicate. Slowly, the fog lifted. My marriage, lost in the chaos of collapse, didn't return, but I forgave myself for allowing it to fade. Love isn't always eternal, and sometimes survival is its own form of devotion. Jack. I heard about him from whispers and news clippings. He was bankrupt, shunned by the very circles he had tried to impress, and alone in the end. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel anger anymore. The man who betrayed me had been stripped down to the essence of his choices, and life had done what it always does. It balanced the scales. I sometimes think back to the man I was before it all fell apart, the man who trusted too easily, who gave too much, who thought loyalty was automatic. That man is gone. But he left behind something invaluable, lessons carved deep by fire and betrayal. I am wiser now, calmer and more deliberate. I understand the weight of trust, the cost of greed, and the power of resilience. And sometimes, when the sun dips low over the desert horizon and the streets turn golden, I whisper to myself, I survived. I rebuilt. I chose life over bitterness. And I truly mean it. Because surviving betrayal doesn't just mean living it, means growing, shaping the pieces of your broken life into something stronger, more honest, and undeniably your own. I don't need revenge anymore. I have something far better, a life that belongs to me, a legacy of integrity, and the knowledge that even at 58, you can rise from ashes that seemed endless. Betrayal tried to destroy me. In the end, it only showed me the man I was always meant to be. This is my story, and if you take anything from it, let it be this. People will fail you. Life will hurt you. But the strength to stand, to rebuild, and to forgive, that is what makes a man unbreakable. If you want, I can now craft a final section. 10 reflection and moral that ties the entire story together, leaving your audience with a powerful, viral-ending, emotional hook for YouTube. It will cement curiosity, emotional resonance, and life lessons Do you want me to do that next? Section 9. Picking up what was left of my life after everything settled. I did not feel like someone who had won anything. There were no fireworks, no cheering crowds, no song playing in the background like in those dramatic movies where the hero walks off into the sunset. It was just quiet. A heavy kind of quiet that settles deep in your chest and makes you realize how much space disappointment can take up inside a person. People think revenge feels like fire, like triumph, like standing on top of a mountain with your arms raised high and the world beneath you. But real revenge does not feel like that. It feels like closing a door on a room you once loved. A room that used to be warm and familiar. A room where memories still sit in the corners like dust. And when you close that door, you do it knowing you are never going back inside. I did not get my business back. What was gone was gone. The company I built with calloused hands and long days and sweat soaked into the seams of my shirt had already collapsed. I could not glue that past together and pretend it would ever be the same. But what I did get back was something I had lost long before the business ever slipped away. I got myself back. I did not chase wealth again. I did not chase status or handshakes or big contracts or rooms full of people who pretended to admire you while waiting for their chance to use you. Instead, I found a small workshop in a quiet town in New Mexico, a place where the air smelled like dust and pine, where the evenings were long and soft, and life moved slow enough that you could hear your own thoughts again. I worked with wood. Simple wood, real wood. I built porches that held families on summer evenings. I made tables where people shared meals and laughter. I repaired fences and built garden swings that children would someday grow up remembering as the place where they laughed their deepest, carefree laughs. Nobody there cared about money or status or what I used to be. People paid me however they could. Sometimes with cash, sometimes with fresh bread, sometimes with stories. And it was strange, the way those stories made me feel like I was part of something again. Something human, something steady, something real. Life became simple. And for the first time in many years, simple was enough. Linda and I did not go back to being husband and wife, and I did not expect us to. Some cracks in love do not close, no matter how gentle your hands are when you try to mend them. But forgiveness is a language too, and over time we learned it. We learned how to talk again without bitterness. We learned how to stand in the same room without the past rising like smoke between us. On holidays, we shared coffee, sometimes a meal. Not lovers, not strangers, something in between. Something honest. Jack served his sentence. Life had a way of carving him down. When he got out, he was thinner, smaller somehow, not in body but in presence. He had the look of a man who had finally seen himself without the lights, without the noise, without the excuses. He sent me a letter, just one. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not argue. He did not make excuses. He just wrote that he finally understood. That what he lost was not the business or the money or the future. He lost the only person who ever stood with him with loyalty, not gain. I held the letter for a long time, read it more than once, and then I put it in a drawer. I did not respond, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because the past is not a place a person can live. You can visit it, remember it, respect what it taught you, but you cannot stay there. Life moves forward. Even after everything burns down, sometimes all you can do is walk with it. One steady breath, one quiet morning, one piece of yourself rebuilt at a time. If you're still listening to me, then maybe you've walked through your own fire. Maybe someone you trusted carved a hole so deep in your chest that you're still trying to fill it. Maybe you're trying to make sense of how a person you would have sworn your life on could look you in the eye and lie without even blinking. I understand that kind of hurt. Lived in it. I slept in it. I breathed it until I couldn't tell where the betrayal ended and where I began. People like to say that time heals everything. They say it like it's a medicine, like there's some invisible clock that washes the pain away. But time doesn't heal. Time just gives you space to decide who you're going to be after the damage is done. And revenge, let me speak plain, revenge doesn't heal a damn thing either. It's a spark, a flash, a hard moment where you stand tall and the world finally sees what was done to you. But after that, after the court papers are filed, after the truth is spoken out loud, after the person who betrayed you finally falls, you're still left alone with your heartbeat and your silence. I thought exposing Jack would fix me. I thought once the world saw who he really was, the weight in my chest would lift. But when it was all done, I still woke up to myself, and that's where the real work begins. Healing didn't come the day I brought him down. Healing came the day I opened my workshop door in New Mexico, smelled sawdust in the air, and felt something steady in me again. It came the day I built a porch swing and watched a little girl laugh like the world had never broken a promise in its life. It came the day I could hear Linda's voice without my heart folding in on itself. Healing came the day I realized I didn't need to undo the past to live in the present. If you're hurting right now, if your trust has been stepped on and your heart feels like someone wrung it dry, let me tell you this. Plain and honest. Choose yourself again, even if you feel small, even if you feel tired, even if all you've got are pieces that used to be something whole. Choose yourself anyway. Rebuild anyway. Breathe anyway. I lost a business. I lost a marriage. I lost my sense of who I was, but I found something stronger than all of that. I found peace, not the kind that falls into your lap, the kind you build with your hands, slow and steady, like a house no storm can touch. I found out that respect is worth more than wealth, that loyalty is worth more than handshakes or contracts, and that the love you give to others means nothing if you don't also give some to yourself. My name is Samuel Carter. I am 58 years old. Yes, he betrayed me for money. But the truth is this. He didn't just lose me. He lost the man who would have stood beside him through anything. He lost the only brother he ever had, and me. I didn't lose. I learned. And I learned this. Your life isn't over just because someone broke your heart. Sometimes, that's where it finally begins.